What's going on, everybody? Fry Daddy here with Fry Daddy's Gear Reviews, and today we're diving into an incredible USA-made knife. In my opinion, one of the best out there in that $500 price tier, and that's going to be the McNees PM Mac 2. This specifically is the 3.5-inch variant here. Now, this guy here is the big brother to the 3-inch that was originally introduced. And it is just one of those knives that gives you that extra blade length from the 3-inch, but yet doesn't feel bulky in hand. So let's go over some specs and then we'll do size comparisons here. So first we'll go ahead and measure this guy. Blade length is obviously 3.5 inches on the nose, and it really is here, with an overall length of right at 7.5 inches there. So super compact. I mean, look at the blade handle ratio here. I mean, literally, it's basically the same size as the handle. So, I mean, in my opinion, that's perfect ratios for the blade and handle, in my opinion. So let's go ahead now and measure weight. So, okay, let's get the scale on here. I got down there. So we're at 4.72 ounces. So some people may think of this as too heavy to carry, but I think the extra heft really gives you confidence in use case when you're using it like a hard use. It really does feel like a hard use knife. And personally, I think it is. So next we're going to go ahead and measure blade stock thickness and handle thickness. So for blade stock here, I think it's right at 150 thousandths. And right at 155 thousandths. And then the handle thickness is going to be right at 479 thousandths, somewhere around there. So it's almost half an inch. The blade steel in this guy is Magna Cut. That is heat treated to an perfect 63 to 64 Rockwell. I mean, it is just perfect. The finish itself is this fully matching dark acid wash. Now, it doesn't really look like it. It looks looks like the blade is a little bit lighter, but actually this is the same finish itself. Next thing on here, this is a titanium frame lock with titanium hardware that's running on bearings. This is an all USA made knife. It's got titanium thumb studs, all the fun stuff here. So let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. So first and foremost, we're going to go ahead and start out with my usual $2 bill here. Let me go ahead and get this straight. So a little bit bigger than the $2 bill, but not too bad. We're going to go ahead and do the good old Sharpie. So not too much bigger than a Sharpie. We're going to go ahead and jump into knives now. So we're going to do the pair of 3 lightweight here. A little bit bigger than the pair of 3 lightweight, but the cutting edge is so much more. I mean, look at that. It's ridiculous, right? So next we'll go into the Tasca Tools chop lifter, which is pretty close to that as well. All right, so next thing we'll get into is going to be design and ergonomics. This knife just melts into your hand. When I first saw this knife, I really was not that impressed because I didn't understand. I mean, I didn't know. It looked like a plain old knife to me. I couldn't understand why this knife was $500 or 500 plus. I just didn't get it. It looked simple. That was it. But once I got this in hand, I realized, like, as soon as I got it, I was on the phone with a buddy of mine and I did this. I was like, I get it now. I understand. The contouring on this knife, even though it's flat, it really, these radiused and rounded edges here make it to where there's no hot spots on the front scale here. And we'll get into, there is a hot spot right here, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But overall, besides that, this knife is great in hand. One thing that's nice is too, it has a finger groove, but it doesn't force you to sit right here. You can be up here, You can be down here, and you literally, it feels right. It does. Now, next thing we're going to talk about is going to be the action. Now, the action on this knife is just incredible. The action is equivalent to a knife that is in the $700 to $800 price tier, something like the Koenig Arius or the Roosevelt. Just perfect. You can finger flick it, reverse flick it. I mean, it is just a perfect knife on that part. Action is just great. Okay. The detent is just perfectly tuned. I don't know what Jonathan McNees does to these knives, what voodoo magic he puts on them, but the detent is perfect. So now let's jump into the blade steel itself, right? So like I said before, this is MagnaCut that is heat treated to a very optimal 63 to 64, which is great because it's going to give you a little bit better edge retention. Now it's going to take toughness down just a tad, but really the toughness on MagnaCut is amazing, so it doesn't really affect too much, right? And then of course you get the incredible stainlessness that MagnaCut is known for. The blade shape itself is a classic drop point type blade shape with a swoop up here. I didn't know how I'd like that, but it really does a good job with food prep and opening packages and things like that. So bravo for that. Now next we're going to jump into carry and clip. So how does this knife carry? We looked at the weight, that 4.7 ounces, which it could seem heavy, but honestly, in the pocket, you really don't notice it because at the end of the day, this is a 4.7 ounce object. And like I was saying, if you're wearing gym shorts, this may not be that great, but if you've got jeans on or work pants, this knife, you don't really notice it in the pocket. I mean, a little bit, but not too much because, I mean, one thing you have too is the thickness on this guy is really not much thicker than a Para 3 lightweight. And like, it's not nearly as tall as a Para 3 lightweight. Maybe on the butt right here, but like overall, I mean, it's not really that tall. Especially not, you won't notice it in the pocket. Now, let's get to one of the main gripes I have about this knife. I'm going to go into cons later, but the main thing that I don't understand. This is an aftermarket clip by Lynch Northwest. Casey Lynch really nailed this clip. The design of this clip is incredible. It's a perfect deep carry. I mean, look at that. You're literally at the edge of the knife in your pocket. You don't have anything sticking out of your pocket. But the original clip on here is basically, to me, like a stamped sheet metal clip, and I just can't understand why the design choice was that. On a $500 to $600 knife, depending on which variant you get in this knife, this should be what comes on the knife. This style, this milled deep carry clip, I think if he had that, this knife is a home run, but I think it would be a grand slam. Overall, it just, to me, it was super confusing as why this was the case. So, next thing we're going to talk about is the final thoughts on this knife here. And this is one of those knives you're getting that's not only beautifully machined, USA made, you're getting the reputation of McNees Knives. Just a company that never compromises on quality. And yeah, this is not a budget knife at like I said before, the $500 to $600 price tier. But what you get with this knife, I mean, this knife is on the level, in my opinion, of a $700 or $800 knife. The action, the fit, finish, everything is just dialed in perfectly. The detent is just incredible. It's, to me, this reminds me of the Roosevelt detent. Just an easy flick or an easy thumb flick, and it just fires out. Like rockets out, like an Ergos as well. Now, let's go into pros and cons. And I have a bunch of pros about this knife, but I do have cons. I have some complaints about this knife. So, One of the pros is you get the elite machining that McNees brings to the table. I mean, when you feel this in hand, it feels robust. It feels quality. It's just, like I said, I can't get over how good this thing was. It really beyond exceeded my expectations. Now, you're getting this elite machining and finish, like I said. You get excellent ergos because this knife just melts in your hand. It is such a comfortable knife to carry and use, with the exception of one thing that we're going to get into in the cons. The action, perfection. For a knife like this, it just is absolutely perfect. And that's due to the amazing detent, the perfect weight of the blade, and the bearings here. And Jonathan has tuned this thing perfectly. Another thing too, this thing is American made. I mean, everything in this knife, besides maybe the bearings and maybe the screws, are all machined in-house, which is just saying something here. So you know you're getting something that is not imported at all. This is made in-house. Now, let's get into the cons, because this is going to be one. Oh, sorry. Another pro is the fact he uses all T8. And this is the second easiest knife I've ever taken apart, next to the aluminum Milan from Chris Reeve. This guy here is so simple, but yet so refined and so well designed. So let's get into cons. Okay. There's a few things I have on here. First and foremost, I'm going to slam that clip again. I do not think on a knife in this price tier you should get anything other than a milled clip. No, it's not even close. I think the clip that comes on it is just abysmal. I do not like it. That is my biggest gripe about this knife. The next gripe I have, and I'm going to give a couple gripes, but overall it's amazing. Right here, this guy. It is sharp. Not just unbearably sharp, but it is sharp. So when you are holding this knife, you will feel it right here. And it's not exactly the most comfortable. If you choke up, you feel it less, but if you're catching it right at the finger groove, it's going to dig into your finger. Now, if you're pinch gripping it, you really won't notice it, but if you're holding it in the traditional like hammer grip, you're gonna feel it. The next thing here is the availability. Now it's gotten better. I mean, they have more available, but for a while there, it was really, really hard to get these. And then the last thing here I'm going to dock it for is it's not a reversible clip. So if you're a left-handed person, you're kind of SOL. But other than that, I have to say, I am so impressed with this knife. It's incredible. So let me know in the comments if you've owned the Mac 2 yet or looking to possibly get one. Because if you're trying to decide, just pick it up. Flat out. You will not be sorry. Either the 3-inch, personally, I'm not really the biggest fan of the 3-inch. I'd much rather the 3.5, but the 3-inch is still an incredible knife. Anyways, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and hit that bell notification because there is definitely more coming. Thanks for stopping by. Y'all have a great one.